His fingers brushed my lower back, and I knew this wasn't forgiveness. It was something else entirely. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't cruel. It was quiet, like a door closing, behind everything I used to believe. For a second, I couldn't move. Not because I didn't want to, but because something in me had cracked open, and the air felt different now. Like it was heavier, thicker, like it carried a secret I wasn't ready to say out loud. I had no idea what I was about to allow, or who I was about to become. If you've ever been touched in a way that made your knees forget how to hold you, if you've ever made a decision with your body that your mind didn't have time to argue with, if you've ever craved something that made you question everything you thought was love, then this story might pull you under in ways you didn't expect. If you like stories that touch too deeply, subscribe to Olivia Touching Tales. This one may change the way you see love. The hotel lights flickered once. Then I followed him in. And let me tell you, I didn't walk in like a woman who knew what she was doing. I walked in like someone who hadn't felt the ground under her feet in months, maybe years. The kind of tired that sleep can't fix. The kind of hungry that no meal touches. The kind of lonely you start to wear like perfume, hoping someone, anyone, will notice the ache before it eats you whole. I remember the way the carpet felt under my bare heels. Soft, almost too soft. Like it knew what was about to happen and was trying to comfort me. I remember the air. Cold, recycled, but charged. As if the room itself was holding its breath. And he didn't say a word. He just turned back toward me, slowly. Like he was waiting for me to make the first move. But we both knew I already had. You know, it's funny. We think cheating is this wild, impulsive thing. A drunken mistake. A hot breath in a dark alley. But sometimes it's quiet. Slow. So slow you don't even notice it happening until it's already behind you. Until you're no longer asking, should I? But how far can I go before I break? And that night, I broke. Not in a way that hurt. Not in a way that left scars. But in a way that finally made room for me. The real me. The one who'd been buried under years of trying to be a good wife, a safe partner, a predictable person. The one who smiled when she was supposed to, said I'm fine too many times, and waited patiently for intimacy that never came. The one who needed this. Whatever this was going to be. I didn't know his name. Not really. And somehow, that made it easier. Cleaner. Because he wasn't here to be a person. He was here to be a mirror. One that reflected every secret I'd shoved deep inside. Every unspoken, I wish you touched me like that. Every swallowed scream. Every bedtime I turned away from the man I married and cried quietly into a pillow so he wouldn't hear. He wasn't saving me. He was letting me finally save myself. So yeah, when I stepped into that hotel room, I knew. This wasn't about infidelity. It was about truth. And my truth was louder than guilt. Hotter than shame. And strong enough to make me scream all night. For the first time in years. But I didn't know that yet. Not fully. All I knew was that the door had closed. The lights had dimmed. And he was waiting for me. Not to be perfect, but to be honest. And God help me. I was ready to be honest. He didn't say a word. Not even as the door shut behind us. He just watched me. Like I was something precious and volatile. Like one wrong move might shatter me completely. And one right move might burn the whole world down. There was no music. No TV buzzing in the background. Just the hum of the elevator retreating back down the shaft behind us. And the silence between two people who knew too much without ever saying it out loud. The hallway outside had been long, empty, lined with quiet doors and low light. I remember the way the cool air brushed against my skin, sharp and clean, like a breath I hadn't taken in years. My silk blouse clung to my back, damp from the nerves, from the heat of his gaze when he let me walk in front of him. It stuck to my spine in small, secret places, as if my body already knew what it was about to reveal. The keycard clinked against the door. Just once. A green light blinked, and I hesitated. Not out of fear, but because I felt everything at once. The wrong, the right, the wanting, the wild ache that had followed me for months. Then I pushed the door open, and the room swallowed us whole. Inside, it was dim. The kind of hotel lighting that pretends not to be watching you. Soft, golden, too warm for how cold I felt inside. The curtains were half drawn. The bed was made too tightly, like it was waiting to be undone. The thermostat hummed gently, barely louder than my breath. And he stood just inside the doorway, silent, letting the room become us. I didn't turn around right away. I just walked slowly, past the edge of the bed, past the little chair in the corner, to the window that looked out over nothing. Just streetlights and shadows. Cars moving quietly through the night. People living their lives. While mine was shifting underneath me in real time. I touched the glass with my fingertips. It was cool, almost wet with condensation. And that chill shot straight through my palm, through my wrist, into the center of my chest, where my heart was already beating too fast to lie to me. Behind me, I heard the soft sound of his shoes as they moved across the carpet. Slow, measured, like he was letting every step be its own decision. I didn't flinch. I didn't ask what he wanted, because I already knew. And more than that, I knew what I wanted, what I needed. Still, he didn't touch me. He stood so close. His breath stirred the fine hairs at the base of my neck. And still, he didn't touch me. He was letting me feel it. The space between our skin. The way it begged to disappear. The air shifted. Warmer. Fuller. And I closed my eyes. Not to block him out, but to let him in. I could hear everything. The faint buzz of the thermostat. The soft groan of the bed as it settled. The almost silent exhale from his chest. The moment his jacket slipped from his shoulders and landed on the chair behind him. Barely a sound. But it hit me like thunder. Because it meant something. It meant he was staying. He was serious. He was present. And presence is the most dangerous kind of touch. When he finally reached for me, it wasn't with his hands. It was with his breath. Warm. Deliberate. Slow against my shoulder. A whisper of heat that slid along my collarbone and made my knees soften without warning. Still, no words. Just being there. Fully. Completely. And I hadn't felt that in so long. Not even with the man I'd made vows to. Not even in my own bed. This man. This stranger with familiar eyes. He was seeing me in ways my husband hadn't in years. And he hadn't even touched me yet. I turned toward him. Slow. Deliberate. Our eyes met. And in that look, there was no permission asked. No guilt offered. Just truth. The truth of a woman who had waited too long. Held too much. Gone too numb. And the truth of a man who understood what it meant to carry someone with his eyes before ever lifting a finger. He reached for the hem of my blouse. Not to take it off. Not yet. He just let his fingers graze it. Like he was asking it for permission, too. The fabric shifted. So light. So slow. Like it didn't want to leave me. But it knew it was time. When it slid up over my skin, I shivered. Not from cold, but from recognition. Because my body was waking up. And I was letting it. He stepped forward. 1 inch. 2. And our breath met before our lips ever did. There's something about being seen. Really seen. When you haven't felt visible in years. It's not sexual. Not at first. It's sacred. It feels like forgiveness. Even when you know. This isn't about being forgiven. It's about being felt. And in that room, with that man, under that dim golden light, I wasn't a wife or a woman making a mistake. I was a body remembering how to feel, a heart remembering how to beat without apology, a soul remembering she was allowed to want and be wanted back. He touched me like I mattered, but all I could think was, Why wasn't I enough for the man I'd married? It's strange how someone else's hands can feel like the first time you've been held. Even after years of being loved, my husband, he was a good man. Still is. He never raised his voice, never raised a hand. He paid attention to the calendar, brought flowers on anniversaries, rubbed my back when I said I was tired. He touched me, but it was always on the surface, like reading instructions off a list. Touch her here, kiss her there, say goodnight, say I love you. But never once did I feel like he couldn't help himself. Never once did I feel craved. There were nights he'd reach for me, half asleep, already drifting, a hand sliding across the sheets, like a man clocking in for a shift he didn't want. And I'd lie there, still, quiet, waiting for him to finish. Sometimes I'd fake it, make the right sounds, make it easy, because that's what wives do, right? We make it easy. But it wasn't about the sex. Not really. It was about presence, about reverence, about wanting to be looked at, the way someone might look at fire. With awe, with caution, with wonder. But with him, I felt like a habit, like something he cared for out of memory, not hunger. And I didn't blame him, not entirely. Life got full. Work, bills, the little everyday noises that pile up. Until there's no room for heat. We became practical, efficient, like business partners who shared a mortgage and a bed, but rarely the same rhythm. I used to sit in the shower, just letting the water run down my face, trying to feel something. I'd touch my own arm, slowly, gently, and try to remember what it felt like to be desired, to be seen, not as someone's wife, not as a mother, not as dependable, or loyal, or kind, but as a woman, as a body, as a storm, as a secret someone wanted to uncover slowly, breath by breath. He did everything right. And still, I was starving. Starving in a way that had nothing to do with food, and everything to do with feeling alive. I started staying up late, scrolling through old photos, opening messages I had no business opening. Just wanting a hit of something real. Raw. Not because I wanted to cheat, but because I wanted to feel close to something unfiltered, unsanitized. Something that reminded me I was still here, still breathing, still a woman. And then he came. This man. The one in the hotel. The one who hadn't even kissed me yet, but had already unzipped something deep inside me, with just his eyes. He didn't talk much, didn't promise anything. He just noticed me. The way I shifted my weight from one foot to the other. The way I held my breath when I was nervous. The way my voice changed when I talked about things that hurt. And when he touched me, he didn't just touch my skin. He touched the ache. The quiet, hidden parts I'd trained myself to ignore. And in that moment, I hated that it wasn't my husband. I hated that someone else had seen me so clearly, when the man who claimed to love me the most looked right past me every day. I hated that it felt good, that it felt right, because it shouldn't have. But it did. It felt like water in a desert, a fire on a frozen night, a deep, sharp inhale, after years of holding my breath. And still, it wasn't his fault. My husband. He didn't mean to leave me behind. He just got used to me being strong. He forgot that strength still needs soft places to land. That even the reliable ones need to be held. So, when this man touched me, with reverence, with presence, with that deep, dangerous silence between breaths, I let him. Not because I stopped loving my husband, but because I finally remembered how it felt to love myself, to choose my own aliveness over someone else's comfort. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't about betrayal. It was about becoming someone I'd lost along the way. It happened a few weeks before the hotel, before that night, before the elevator, before his hands. We were at dinner, me and my husband. Not a fancy anniversary kind of dinner. Just a Thursday night. One of those rare evenings where the house was quiet. And we weren't exhausted. We sat across from each other, a single candle between us, flickering, trying to burn through the silence we'd grown used to. He was watching me, not in the way I wanted, not with hunger or awe or even curiosity, just watching, like a man trying to recognize someone he used to know. And I felt it, this ache sitting right between us, like a third guest we hadn't invited, but couldn't ignore. He reached across the table, lightly tracing his thumb over my knuckles. It wasn't romantic. It was searching, like he was asking a question he didn't know how to say out loud. But then he did, just like that. Soft, barely above the hum of the restaurant. "Do I make you feel alive?" I froze. My breath caught somewhere behind my ribs. Alive? It was such a raw, strange word to hear come from him. This man who organized our lives so well. Who scheduled date nights, set reminders for birthdays, always made sure the car had gas before I needed it. Alive? I stared at our hands, his thumb still moving over mine in slow, steady circles. And after a long, long pause, I looked him in the eye and said it. "You keep me safe." But no, I haven't felt truly alive in years. He didn't flinch, didn't pull away. He just nodded, quietly, like he'd known, like maybe he'd felt it too. And I hated how sad he looked. Like he wanted to fight for me, but didn't know how. That night, I curled into him in bed. Not out of passion, but out of love, history, grief. And while the rain tapped softly against the window, and my head rested on his chest, I asked the question that had been whispering in my bones for months. "What would you do?" I said. "Barely more than breath. If I needed more than what we have?" He didn't answer right away. His fingers moved through my hair, slowly, methodically, like a man trying to memorize the shape of a woman he couldn't hold anymore. And then, in the dark, with the weight of years and vows and quiet disappointments between us, he whispered, "If it kept you whole, I'd let you find it." Not with bitterness, not with anger, just love, the kind of love that's willing to let go, even if it means losing something. I cried that night. Not loud, not messy, just quiet tears soaking into his shirt, because I realized something terrifying. He didn't want to stop me. He wanted me to stay, but not if it meant watching me fade. He wasn't giving me permission. He was giving me space. To choose. To explore. To remember what it felt like to be lit up from the inside out. That moment. It didn't feel like betrayal. It felt like the most honest moment we'd had in years. Two people, facing the distance between them. Not with blame, but with truth. And love. A quiet, painful, beautiful kind of love. I didn't make a decision that night. There was no rush, no plan, no fantasy. Just a knowing. A door had opened, and he wasn't going to close it. And maybe that's the part that hurts the most. That it wasn't some impulsive, reckless thing. It was gentle. It was thoughtful. It was born from a place of trying to stay, without slowly dying. So when the man at the hotel looked at me that way, like I was made of stormlight and sweetness and every kind of ruin, I didn't run. Because the truth is, I'd already been given the map. Not to hurt, not to destroy, but to remember who I was. Before I forgot, the door clicked shut behind me. It wasn't loud, but it felt final, like the sound of a decision you can't take back. The suite was quiet. Too quiet. That kind of stillness that feels like the air itself is holding its breath. He was already inside. Not my husband, but the man, the one he introduced me to. Let that settle for a second. This man wasn't random. He wasn't a fling from a bar or someone I met on some lonely app at 2 a.m. My husband chose him. Carefully, intentionally, like he was picking a lock. I remember just standing there, right inside the door, my back still to the room, my hand resting on the handle like maybe, Maybe I could still turn around and walk out, but I didn't, because I felt him behind me. Not close, not touching, just present. Like gravity, like a center I didn't know I'd been drifting from. He didn't speak at first, didn't move, and when I finally turned to face him, I saw it in his eyes. That he already knew why I was there, why my husband had sent me, why I was shaking, why this moment meant more than either of us could say. He looked at me like something sacred, not pure, not innocent, but holy, a woman on the edge of something dangerous and divine. And then he finally said it. Low, steady. I only go where I'm needed. My breath caught, just like that, because I felt the truth in it. In my chest, in my stomach, in the places I had learned to ignore. He wasn't here to seduce me, or save me, or claim me. He was here to meet me in the space my husband had stepped back from, to enter the quiet my marriage no longer filled. And in that moment, everything in me went still, because I understood. This wasn't a betrayal. Not yet. It was a passage, a threshold, an unspoken contract humming in the air between us. One where the rules were no longer set by guilt or tradition, but by hunger and honesty. I nodded. Not a big gesture. Just enough. Enough to say, I'm here. I'm scared, but I'm still here. Enough to say, I don't know who I'll be after this, but I can't go back to who I was before. He walked toward me slowly. No rush. No assumptions. Just presence. And I stood there, still holding my breath, as he reached up, not to touch me, but to see me, with his eyes, with his silence, like I was something he'd waited for, like he was letting me arrive. I remember that exact moment, the moment everything changed, because I stopped thinking about my marriage. I stopped thinking about what this would mean tomorrow. I just let myself feel, for the first time in a long, long time. And here's what I felt. Not shame, not sin, not lust, but relief. Like something tight in my chest had finally let go. Like I'd been holding my breath for years. And someone finally said, you can exhale now. It wasn't the beginning of a scandal, or the end of a vow. It was the crossing, the place where I stopped waiting to be chosen, and started stepping into the version of myself that had been whispering beneath my skin all this time. I wasn't being taken. I was being received. And I think that's what scared me the most. Not that I was about to do something I couldn't undo, but that I might never want to go back. He didn't rush. Not even close. He moved like the night itself. Slow, knowing, watching. There was a chair behind me. He pulled it out with a soft scrape across the floor, and sat in front of me. And then, he knelt. Not to worship. Not to beg. But to see. His hands rested lightly on his thighs. His eyes held mine. He didn't reach for me. Didn't touch. He just waited. Like he wanted me to decide whether I would let this happen, or keep carrying my silence alone. I remember the way the light caught the side of his face, warm and flickering. It made him look gentler than I expected, less like a fantasy, and more like something human. Real. Grounded. He raised a hand. Paused. His fingers hovered over the hem of my blouse. Not demanding. Inviting. I gave him the smallest nod, and that was all he needed. His hands were warm. His fingertips slow. Soft. Intentional. Not the kind of touch that wants something. The kind that gives. Like he'd studied my loneliness. Mapped it out. Learned its edges and shadows. And was finally tracing them. With something tender. He never spoke. But his silence said everything. You matter. You're safe. You don't have to disappear tonight. Every breath between us carried a kind of reverence. I wasn't a body. I was a story he was listening to, with both hands open. Then something shifted. His hands, still tender, started to anchor. He reached for my wrists, slowly, and wrapped them in his palms. Not to restrain, but to hold. Like I was floating away, and he was grounding me. He pulled me closer, inch by inch, until our breath met in the middle. There was no room left for pretending, no veil to hide behind. And when his lips found my collarbone, my knees almost buckled, because I hadn't been kissed like that in years. Not gently, not desperately, but with certainty, as if he knew what I needed before I could form the words. His touch deepened, firmer now, more sure. I let out a sound I didn't recognize. It wasn't a moan. It wasn't a cry. It was a release. Like something inside me had finally cracked, and the ache spilled out in a single, breathless note. It was like drowning, but in a sea I didn't want to escape from. The more he gave, the more I let go. And I realized it wasn't lust pulling me under. It was recognition. The recognition of being seen and not needing to disappear. His voice deepened when he finally spoke. It was just one word. Stand. And I did. Not because I was told, but because I trusted. His hands guided me. Not roughly, but with purpose. Like he'd been waiting for this part. The moment I'd surrender my shame and let something else lead. He turned me, slowly. Placed his hand on the small of my back. Not pushing. Just directing. And something inside me broke open. I didn't realize how tightly I'd been holding control, clutching it like armor. And now, I was letting it fall, piece by piece. He didn't hurt me, but he shattered something buried. Something I thought I needed to survive. It was the lie I'd been living inside, that I had to be small, to be loved, that I had to be quiet, to be wanted. He moved with focus, clarity, like he knew the map of my body better than I ever had. Every movement was a mirror to something deeper. And I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. I heard the door open. Soft, measured. Another man stepped in. And everything in me tensed. Then melted. Because I understood. This wasn't chaos. This wasn't shame. This was composition. Two energies. Two rhythms. And me. The melody between them. They moved around me. Like I was something fragile. And on fire. One traced my shoulder. The other steadied my hips. Their timing was perfect. Unrehearsed. But aligned. I'd never been touched like that. Not just physically, but with intention. With artistry. They weren't taking. They were tuning. As if I was music. And they were composers. With trembling hands. And I stopped trying to hold myself together. Because their touch didn't make me fall apart. It made me feel whole. For the first time. In a long, long time. And then, there were more. I don't know how many. I just remember the moment. The room changed. The air got heavier. But I wasn't afraid. I was ready. They didn't speak. None of them did. But they saw me. All of me. And still, they came closer. One behind me. One at my side. One kneeling again. A circle. Not of men. But of presence. And I let go. All the sounds in the room faded. Except breath. And heartbeat. And hands. Not rough. Not rushed. But everywhere. I wasn't just being touched. I was being rewritten. Each stroke. Each gasp. Each surrender. Erasing old chapters. Old guilt. Old grief. I wasn't screaming from pain. I wasn't breaking. I was becoming. Becoming something louder. Softer. More me. It was a scream of recognition. Of homecoming. Of finally being found. And in that moment, I knew I hadn't been starving for attention or adventure. I'd been starving to be seen without disappearing. And somehow, here in this room, I wasn't invisible anymore. My eyes closed. I don't even remember when. One moment, I was in my body, aware of every touch, every gasp, every inch of skin. And the next, I was gone. Not lost. Not overwhelmed. Just somewhere else. My hands were trembling. Chest heaving. Fingers curled so tight they burned. It wasn't the pleasure, though it came in waves. So loud. So all-consuming. It almost tore me apart. No. It was the cracking. That deep, ancient tear. In the middle of my soul. Finally giving way. Like lightning across a night sky. It wasn't silent. It wasn't small. It was raw. Rupturing. Holy. A flash that revealed everything I'd buried. All the old grief. All the swallowed screams. All the aching years of feeling untouched. Even while being held. And then, it poured out. Not tears. Something older. Something heavier. Like the ocean inside me had waited my whole life to pull back the tide and reveal the wreckage beneath. I wasn't crying, but I was weeping. Not from sorrow, but from the relief of finally coming home to a body I had learned to fear, to a hunger I had tried to shame, to a version of myself I never believed could be loved and wanted. Everything fell away. The men, the sounds, the heat. Just quiet. Not empty. Full. The kind of quiet you feel in your bones. Like standing inside a cathedral. After all the candles have burned out, no one moved. Not even me. I wasn't frozen. I wasn't hiding. I was undone. Completely. Utterly. Beautifully. Undone. I lay there. Every muscle soft. Every breath a whisper. And for the first time in years, maybe my whole life, I didn't want to run. Didn't want to fix. Didn't want to explain. I cracked wide open. And what came out wasn't desperation or guilt. It was freedom. Pure, trembling, unapologetic freedom. I wasn't broken. I was finally free. And I didn't need permission to stay that way. My eyes opened, softly, like waking from a dream I didn't want to leave. The light in the room had changed. Dimmer now. Muted. Like even the air knew. Something sacred had just happened here. And in the corner, still, quiet, unmoving, was him. My husband. Not hiding. Not ashamed. Just there. Watching. His eyes met mine. And everything in me stopped. Not because I was afraid, but because I'd never seen him like that before. Not in all the years. The birthdays. The quiet dinners. The Sunday morning rituals. Never like that. Tears in his eyes. Not the kind that fall. The kind that shine. That just sit there. Making everything else feel too loud. Too sharp. And he wasn't broken. He wasn't angry. He looked proud. And somehow aching. Like he had just witnessed something he'd waited his whole life to understand. He didn't say a word. Didn't ask questions. Didn't need anything from me. He just looked. Like he was seeing me. For the first time again. He didn't touch me that night. But he gave me something I didn't even know I was still searching for. He gave me space. He gave me permission. He gave me back to myself. Not as a gift he could own, but as a truth he'd finally let me live. And I saw it then. How deep his love ran. Not in what he held on to, but in what he was willing to let me feel. Without him at the center of it. That's not weakness. That's not betrayal. That's devotion. And in that quiet corner of a hotel suite, with my body still humming, my heart wide open, and everything inside me forever changed, I loved him more than I ever had before. Not for what he did, but for what he didn't try to take away. Sometimes, love isn't about possession. It isn't about being the only one they reach for in the dark, or the only hands that ever learn their skin. Sometimes, love is quieter than that, braver. It's about sanctuary, about seeing the ache in someone you've built a life with. And instead of fearing it, you open the door, even if someone else holds the key. For just one night, That's what he gave me. Not just permission, but trust. He trusted that I would return. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Because now, there was no part of me left unspoken, untouched, or unseen. He didn't lose me that night. He met a version of me I'd buried under years of safety and silence. And I wonder, could you do that? Could you love someone enough to let them be undone by another? To watch them break open and bloom in the hands of someone else, just to know they've finally met themselves? Not everyone could. And that's okay. But still, I wonder. Tell me what you'd do. I'm genuinely curious. And if this touched something inside you, if it left a quiet echo in your chest that you can't quite name, subscribe to Olivia Touching Tales. We go where the heart hides. Every time.